Right, let's start with Australia's Test captain, Pat Cummins. Recent scans reveal that he doesn't have a stress fracture, but he's got a hot spot and he's an injury doubt for the Ashes. He's unlikely to play in the one-day games coming up against New Zealand and India, but the man who knows what's really going on is Ben Horne. I should imagine, Ben, that this is a matter of top secret from Cricket Australia, or do you actually know what's going on?
Hey Manners, hey Harmy. Yeah, look, it's quite a big story. I mean, Australia is remaining optimistic that Pat Cummins can be right for the first test, but we all know, and no one more than you, I'm sure, Harmy, that back issues and fast bowlers aren't usually a good recipe. So, look, this is definitely a potential game changer for the Ashes if Pat Cummins can't play a role in the series, or even if he can only play a role for a couple of tests. So look, I think the best case scenario for Australia is that Cummins can play the first test, but even then, I don't think you'll be seeing him play all five. So at the very least, that's still a big change to what Australia would have been hoping for.
Yeah, it's good news. It's a hotspot, but a hotspot could turn into a stress fracture if you push it that little bit far. So if you have to be managed well, the difference between our captain and Ben Stokes is we are so important. He's so important to England's leadership. When he's bowling, he's an unbelievable package. Pat can't do that though, can he? If he doesn't bowl, he doesn't play. And how much of that an effect? That's going to be a massive effect, especially the way Australia have played over the course of the last few years into the sort of the Test Championship cycle. It'd be a huge loss if he missed, even if he missed two Test matches for Australia in this Ashes.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. I mean, I think you summed up the situation that he's in perfectly there in the sense that it's not yet a stress fracture, and Australia really has to be very careful with the way they prepare Pat Cummins from here to make sure it doesn't progress into that. So, look, they are thinking they have enough time up their sleeve. There's 12 weeks. I think all going well, they would plan to rest him for 6 to 8 weeks where he basically does nothing and then try and build him up from there. George Bailey, the selector, today said that they would be prepared to play him in the first test, even if he doesn't have a single match under his belt beforehand. So it's possible that Pat Cummins could just get his loads up at training, and the first test of the Ashes, or whichever is the first test that he plays in the Ashes, could be his first game of cricket since this occurred. But look, it would be a huge blow. There's no getting away from it. I mean, Pat Cummins is Australia's best bowler, and yeah, look, I think he's similar to Ben Stokes in terms of the way he can inspire the rest of the team with the way he leads from the front. Perhaps he does it in a slightly different way to Ben, but still a very effective captain. Look, Australia has had to rely on Steve Smith stepping in on quite a few occasions since Pat took over the captaincy, so it's not entirely new. They went to Sri Lanka with Steve Smith as captain earlier this year. He's done it a few times. He's obviously done the role full time in the past. So I actually think the impact on the bowling lineup, I think, is probably the greater blow to Australia if they're relying then on Scott Boland, Josh Hazlewood, Mitchell Starc for bulk test matches and potentially needing to go even deeper than that. And that's where Australia's fast bowling depth will really be tested.
Do you think we might see a complete redesign of the team? I mean, it's a straight swap, isn't it? Boland for Cummins at the moment. But could they go down the line of Cameron Green and Bo Webster playing a couple of all rounders and just a very different looking team?
Yeah, Manners, I think that's actually quite likely now. I mean, I don't think they'd play the two all-rounders instead of a fast bowler, but certainly I think it massively increases Bo Webster's chances of staying in the team. There was a bit of talk that with Cameron Green coming back to bowling, perhaps Bo Webster would be the unlucky man if they decided that number three was too high for Cameron Green to be batting. But I think if you look at all the different factors Australia's facing, I just can't see how Bo Webster doesn't play the first test. I think, firstly, the extra insurance in a bowling sense for Green and for Cummins, and also to make sure that none of the other bowlers, go too far during the series as well. And also, they're flat out Australia at the moment finding one batsman to come in at the top order without trying to find two. So even though Cameron Green at number 3 is not perfect, I think that's going to have to do at least for the first couple of tests.
Then in my time, we used to come with 1 million players because we had loads of injuries, and I mean, not real sort of massive options. It's normally England that are in trouble. Is there a slight panic in Australia because, like what you just said there, the batting sort of vulnerabilities at the top 3. If you go into a test series when you've got your 4 fast bowlers and 3 fast bowlers and Scott Boland as a backup, that seems to be, that's good enough. But all of a sudden, if you get an injury and Pat Cummins is not playing as well, I mean, then you're looking, where do you look there from a fast bowler's point of view? So the vulnerability at 1, 2, 3 is who's coming in. But if Boland or Hazelwood or Stark was to get injured with no Cummins, Australia could be in a bit of disarray.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, before this Cummins injury drama, I would have still had Australia favourites just based on the bowling attack that they have. But if Pat Cummins is no certainty of getting through the series, and as you say, over the course of 5 tests, you'd have to expect that there could be an issue or two along the way for the other guys as well. So I think that it's a massive leveler in the series. I mean, Australia are already very wary of England's batting lineup. Harry Brook, Joe Root. I think Josh Hazelwood acknowledged last week this is probably the best batting lineup England will have brought to Australia for a very long time. I think the advantage that Australia had was in the fast bowling. That there's doubt over Archer and Wood and Ben Stokes, whereas Australia, we're all looking pretty fit. So yeah, look, I think it is a big game changer in the series. I'd be really interested as to who the next man in line would be for Australia. I'm guessing Sean Abbott might be at the top of the list. He's never played a test, but he's very reliable and has been there or thereabouts for a long time. Michael Neser, who's played 2 test matches in certain conditions, I could see them looking to him. Brendan Doggett, another uncapped player who's on the edges. And Jai Richardson's an interesting one. He's played well in the 3 tests that he's played, but that was way back in 2021 was his last test. But he might be fit come the end of the summer. So there's a few options around, but largely untested. So, suddenly, look, I don't know whether it's panic, but, I think, there's a lot of uncertainty around the Australian team.